This is Hidden Killers Week in Review.
A look back at the most prolific stories of the week.
You're listening to the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Brueski.
Featuring attorney, guest, and former felony prosecutor Eric Faddis.
Trial of Ashley Benefield, it is wrapped up, and she has been found guilty of manslaughter, not second degree. It was a lesser charge that she was found guilty on after the jury had a chance to hear all avenues of this case. And what avenues they went down, oh my gosh, we learned a whole lot more about Doug and herself. Joining me to discuss, Eric Faddis, defense attorney. Eric, what's your reaction to the verdict here in this case?
Yeah, like you said, that there was a lot that was revealed in this trial that not everyone knew about before in terms of Ashley's claims against Doug, prior domestic violence, that kind of thing. And as the trial went on, I sort of began to lend more credence to those domestic violence claims. She got on the stand and there were differing interpretations as to whether she was believable or not. And ultimately, the jury found that she was not. Mm-hmm. I was slightly surprised by the conviction, but she's looking at serious prison time now.
Yeah, up to 30 years, minimum of 11.5. Where do you think that's going to land?
It's always hard to say. A judge, in looking at this, they're going to look to whether she has any prior criminal history. I'm not aware of any.
Yeah.
They're going to look at mitigating circumstances. And so it'll depend in part on whether the judge believed her testimony and her claims of prior domestic violence and whether that should afford her any leniency. I think it might. I'm expecting something kind of in the middle of that range, lower to middle of that range.
Yeah, like around 15-ish maybe, and then, maybe it'll be lesser, good behavior, all that.
That'd be my take on it too, especially with a charge that is something less than first or second degree murder, which is where she's at.
It was emotional testimony. We watched, every second of it when she was on the stand. And I saw, some very good attorneys really get teary-eyed watching it and really being, feeling it. I don't know. I don't know if I'm biased or what, because I've dealt with narcissists on a very personal level before, but I don't know. She was kind of coming in and out of credibility for me. There was moments where it's like, okay, I believe she was a victim of abuse. Without a doubt, I think Doug was a shitty human being. I think he was abusive, mentally abusive. She flat out said he wasn't physically abusive on the stand. But I do believe he had basically the mentality of a 13-year-old boy in terms of his level of control and wanting control over this woman and his outbursts at other men. Just nuts. But I also feel as much as he was an intimidator, she was a manipulator as well. And it seemed to be a very toxic mix.
A totally toxic duo here. And yes, some of the allegations from Ashley really align with, our understanding of domestic violence in the legal world, some lethality factors there, which just increase the likelihood that something terrible could happen, including alleged abuse of an animal, our claims that he was going to commit suicide. These are all sort of measures of manipulation and control that Doug allegedly engaged in, but Ashley's hands aren't totally clean either.
What do you think sunk her? What do you think made the jury go, not second degree murder, but we're going to go with manslaughter here?
Yeah. Sometimes the jury kind of splits the baby. They reach a compromise when they can't all agree on a lead charge like second degree murder. She's younger and that can affect how a person presents on the stand. She's not some, professional witness in her 40s or 50s.
Yeah.
She's in her 20s. And so I think that may have influenced her demeanor and the jury interpreted that a certain way.
How do you think, or how did you take the prosecution of Ashley Benefield? We're going to watch a clip of her trying to act out what took place, and I'm curious to get your take on, I guess the ethics of how this was handled. Let's take a look.
I really got like this, and he was making fighting motions. I don't know. I'm not a fighter. I don't know.
Okay.
It was scary.
Did he have his hands in fists?
Not at that point. They were I don't know.
Was he coming at you like this?
When he lunged at me, he came very quickly.
Okay, so he lunged. Was his fist up when he lunged?
I don't remember.
Okay. So you start shooting, and he does what?
He kept coming at me.
Okay, so then you keep shooting again. And he falls down on his back?
His legs went up in the air.
Okay, where do his legs go?
In the air.
How high in the air?
I don't know.
Do they go over his head?
I don't know. It's like his feet slipped out.
Okay.
And his feet and his legs went up in the air.
And were you still shooting at the time?
I don't remember.
You can have a seat. So after this incident, you claim that you had swelling to your face, right?
And they take a break. There's two ways to look at that. I mean, you can look at it and go, oh my God, this is a victim of trauma and she is reliving it right now. And it is horrific. And it is literally debilitating to her. Or you can look at it as this is someone who's getting called on the carpet for their claim of their story. And they realize what sort of a hole they've dug themselves into. And they're reacting to that. I'm not saying you can't turn that on and act that way. That is a possibility. People can do that. So I think to take that out of the mix completely is not accurate and not responsible. And I'm not trying to blame a victim. I obviously think she was abused mentally, but I don't necessarily know what to make of her reactions. Let's talk about her reactions, and then we're going to talk about the attorneys and how they were handling that. What's your thoughts on
that was a clip, Tony, in which I thought she appeared pretty darn credible.
Yeah.
What wasn't wasn't the case during all of her testimony, in my opinion. But for that one, those emotions, you can see her physically sort of cowering. You can see her shaking. You'd hear the quiver in her voice. All of that did not seem particularly like rehearsed or staged or anything to me in that instant.
But what about the argument that was made in closing on the part of the prosecution? And I thought was interesting because we can only tell so much from the screens that we're watching it on. No tears. And when she gets the Kleenex too, not wiping her eyes. I mean, we made the same arguments on Murdaugh. So, I mean, I can't just, somebody's going to go and say, oh, you're picking on her. I'm not. I mean, I am a huge advocate for domestic violence survivors. I myself am one. But I also am a advocate for calling out bullshit when I see it too, or somebody trying to work a system. And I think there's a weird gray area on all of this.
Oh, sure. No, I agree. And I'm not an expert in human crying or anything, but, just in dealing with humans throughout my life and in the legal system, sometimes the tears are flowing. Sometimes for other folks, they are clearly in emotional distress, but they are not having that physical manifestation of, liquid coming from their eyes. Sure. And so it's a fair argument by the prosecution, but I think we've got to take reviewing her demeanor as a whole in its totality. Yeah. And because it's missing that piece, that doesn't necessarily take away from the credibility for me.
Are you ready to listen to this podcast ad-free?
Then hit subscribe to the True Crime Today Premium Plus channel now on Apple Podcasts.
You'll instantly have access to all of our episodes labeled Advance Ad-Free. You'll hear the interviews before everyone else and with no interruptions.
No interruptions.
Subscribe to the True Crime Today Premium Plus channel now on Apple Podcasts.
And start binging now.